A few months back, my ex-girlfriend cheated on me with her coworker after being together for 15 years. She was married once before and got cheated on, so when we started dating, she wasn't eager to jump into marriage again. We were content being boyfriend and girlfriend, and that worked for us. Unfortunately, she couldn't have kids due to a past accident. Despite that, we shared everything like a typical married couple, from our finances to our house, which we both owned 50-50, except for the marriage certificate. Our zest for life was unparalleled, which our families didn't quite appreciate. We preferred unconventional ways of life, and that included traveling to different countries each year. 2 years ago, we hit Bali, and the year after that, Bolivia. Our goal was to visit all the countries on our bucket list. By the way, we're both in our late 40s. Here's the ironic part: her ex-husband cheated on her with a coworker, leading to their divorce. She was devastated, and I came along acting as her knight in shining armor. It took years to heal her, build her up, and regain her trust. And then she goes and pulls the same stunt with her married coworker. So, a couple of years ago, my girlfriend started working in a new department at work. She would always talk about her male colleagues, especially one who she thought was a good man. She said his wife didn't appreciate him and they would have arguments. She even gave him relationship advice and told him what presents to buy for his wife. But then she came home one day and said that he was being inappropriate and she wanted to limit their relationship. She wouldn't tell me what happened, but after pressing her for hours, she finally said that it doesn't matter. I asked her if it was physical, and she said yes. She was offended and felt like she needed to re-establish professional boundaries. She didn't want to get him in trouble, but I told her to report it to HR so there would be a record. Eventually, he apologized, and things were fine between them. Just a few weeks before our vacation in August, I couldn't help but notice that my girlfriend had bought some scandalous swimwear that could only be worn in a Victoria's Secret fashion show. I thought to myself, oh wow, this vacation is about to get steamy. During our stay in Costa Rica, I caught her posing in front of the bathroom mirror in that swimwear and taking selfies. When I asked her who the pictures were for, she said nobody. I pressed her for an answer, and she said it was just for personal enjoyment because she had never looked this good in her entire life. As our vacation went on, she became more obsessed with her phone and demanded more and more revealing photos. Finally, on the 4th day, I stumbled upon a picture of a mystery man holding his Johnson Air on her phone. I was really bothered when I started thinking that my girlfriend might be sending photos to other guys on Instagram. I mean, she was always on her phone, taking those revealing photos, so it couldn't be just for me, right? But she kept her phone too close to her, so I couldn't check it without waking her up. I even thought about getting her drunk, but that seemed a bit too extreme even for me. By the end of the trip, I was pretty sure that she was taking those photos for someone else, and it made me feel like I was being used. When we got home, I was so distant and irritable, and my girlfriend noticed. But I didn't want to tell her my suspicion just yet because I didn't have any proof, and I didn't want to push her underground if she was actually having an emotional affair. When she asked what was wrong, I told her that I was upset because our vacation seemed more about her and her phone than about us, and it was a real concern of mine. I asked if there was anything she wanted to talk about, but she said no. I was desperate to get into her phone, so I added some sleep-inducing mixture to her food during dinner. It worked like a charm, and she was knocked out like a light. I tried to sneakily grab her phone, but it was password protected, and I didn't know the code. I was so mad at myself for not thinking ahead, but then I came up with a genius plan to trick her into giving me her password. The next day, her phone was sitting on the kitchen counter, locked up tight. I grabbed it and told her I wanted to take a photo of her cooking but needed to use her phone because it had a better camera. She wasn't suspicious and handed it over. As she typed in her password, I played it cool and acted like everything was normal, and it worked. I finally had access to her phone. I spiced up my girl's dinner with a little something to help her sleep deeper again and took the opportunity to check out her phone while she was out. Turns out she's got a bunch of thirsty guys messaging her on Instagram, but she's too classy to respond or send any pics. But then I got curious and decided to snoop some more, and it looks like she's got a thing going on with her married coworker. They were careful not to be too explicit in their texts, but it was pretty obvious to me what was going on. He was asking for pics and saying good night and stuff, and even though she spends all day with him at work, she was texting him more than me. And of course, all the incriminating pics were deleted, but little did she know that the phone saves them anyway. Rookie mistake, babe. So the next day, I went on a wild goose chase to find a good SMS spy app to snoop on my girlfriend's phone. 2 days later, I spiked her food again and installed the spy app. The next morning, I called her out on her affair with her coworker. She denied it, so I demanded to see her phone. She reluctantly handed it over, but little did she know, I had already seen all the incriminating text messages through my spy app. I then proceeded to show her the unclothed photos of her coworker in her phone gallery, and her face turned redder than a tomato. She tried to lie her way out of it, but I wasn't having it. I reminded her that she willingly sent her pics to him, and that's still considered cheating. When she tried to make excuses, I told her that the relationship was over and that I would confront her coworker. She begged me not to involve him, but I wasn't backing down. He disrespected me and his own wife by sending those photos to my girlfriend. We had a massive fight that morning before I left for work. I then drove 45 minutes to her workplace and waited for her and her affair partner to return from lunch. I waited for them to show up, feeling like a ninja in the parking lot. I knew my relationship with my girlfriend was done, but I wanted to make a scene anyway. I wasn't gonna let that punk off the hook. He disrespected me, so I landed a sucker punch on him as soon as he stepped out of the car. He didn't go down, but he was definitely wobbly. Some of their coworkers saw the whole thing while my girlfriend tried to hold me back. I called her a whore in front of everyone and told them they were both avoiding each other. He was too scared to fight back and didn't know whether to run inside or drive away. I kept on offending them as more people showed up. My girlfriend kept pleading for me to leave, bawling that I'd ruin her life. I got back into my car and drove away after saying my piece. That night, my girlfriend didn't come back home, and she texted me, saying I was the worst human being ever. She kept denying the affair and claimed that I ruined her life with my false accusation. I told her I have a female coworker, and I never send her those kinds of photos. I told her she could leave if she wanted, so she went to stay with a friend. The next day, she came crawling back, begging to stay in the relationship. I was hesitant, and I told her that I couldn't take her back now that I knew she was hooking up with her coworker. So for the next couple of weeks, my girlfriend and I were living together like two strangers who happened to share the same roof. Eventually, we started talking again, and things started to get back to normal, whatever that means. I'd been spying on her texts, and it seemed like they had stopped communicating, but she wanted us to move on and forget about everything that had happened. I, on the other hand, wanted her to confess to everything. She finally admitted to exchanging some photos and having an emotional affair, but she denied that anything physical happened between her and her coworker. Unfortunately, the spy app didn't give me any evidence of a physical affair, so I decided to work on our relationship, and we were doing fine. She even found a new job the next month, and everything seemed to be back to the way it was before she cheated on me. But my world was shattered again when I saw a suspicious charge on my credit card for $350 for a pair of men's shoes and some other expenses. I was shocked when my girlfriend gave me a pair of shoes that weren't my style, and I suspected that they were meant for someone else. I tried using a spy app to monitor her texts, but it didn't work with her coworker. Then I remembered some relationship advice that says affairs can go underground, so I thought she might have a secret phone. I sneaked into her car at night to find it, and to my surprise, I found an old flip phone under the seat. It wasn't password protected, and all the incriminating texts were right there for me to see, dating back to the time when I confronted them at their job site. So, I snooped around and found out that my girlfriend was buying gifts for her side piece to get back in his good graces. They were meeting up in hotels and even my own house for some steamy action, and of course, it was all right there in their text messages. I took a bunch of pics of those messages, and let me tell you, they were longer than the line at the DMV. From what I could see, she was the one pushing for everything, but it all fell apart when the guy got the boot from work because of their little rendezvous. Still, she was head over heels for him, sending him these epic messages while he just replied with a K or an emoji. But I had a plan. I had cameras all over my house, so if they came over, I would catch them red-handed. I even slept on the couch just in case they showed up. And I gotta say, it was a pretty low point for me. I mean, I wasted 15 years of my life on this woman, and who knows how long she had been stepping out on me. And to top it all off, I found out that I was just her backup plan while she was trying to get with some married guy who was practically young enough to be her son. Oh, and by the way, she can't have kids because she messed up her womb with a botched termination. The next day, I woke up early and bolted to work to avoid seeing her face. I couldn't concentrate on work and just wanted to go back home to check if the camera had recorded my girlfriend and her fling sneaking into my house. When I finally got home, I discovered that the camera's memory had been wiped clean, leaving only a week's worth of footage. I felt like I was stabbed in the back. Not only did she buy a burner phone to keep her affair a secret, but now she's also wiping the camera footage to cover her tracks. When she came back home, I was waiting for her with all the incriminating text messages on full display. I confronted her about the affair, and she couldn't deny it since the text messages from her burner phone were right there. She admitted to having a 2-year-long affair with him and even claimed to have loved him, but now she's realizing that she was being used by him. According to her, he promised to leave his wife for her, but it turns out he was just trying to get into her pants. I told her that I understood that his wife wasn't treating him well, but what did I do to deserve this kind of disrespect? Did I miss something? What was it that made him want to smash my girlfriend instead of staying loyal to his wife? As for this chick I've been with for a long time, suddenly wanting something different, claiming I'm not as romantic and pampering as I used to be. But when I caught her in the act, I showed her receipts of her buying expensive stuff for her affair partner, who wasn't even buying her anything. She couldn't come up with any excuse and went silent. Later, I confronted her about the missing camera footage, and she denied knowing anything about it. But when I showed her the text messages of her inviting the dude to our house, she had nothing to say. I told her that we should just break up and go our separate ways. She begged for forgiveness, but I wasn't sticking around for that. I even called a real estate agent to sell the house and split the profit 50-50. She told me to sleep on it, but I already had, and that was my final decision. It's a good thing I caught her before she could use any more of my hard-earned cash. The next day, I gave a buzz to a real estate agent, and he put the house up for grabs. Dumping someone you've been with for 15 years ain't a walk in the park. It took me a while to come to that decision. I finally realized that she just wasn't into me as much as I was into her, and it was time to call it quits. I thought I'd be with her till death do us part, but that's what I get for thinking too much. My folks adored her, but she fell head over heels for some bloke at work who probably was spinning yarns about how he's a prince in another dimension. She spent more time with him at work than with me at home, enough time for him to get into her head and make her forget about me. This guy was married with kids, yet he was envious of me and wanted what I had. If I were his wife, I'd want to be informed of the situation, but that's none of my business. I was planning to tell his wife about the affair after I cut ties with my girlfriend. We still lived in the same house but in separate rooms, only waiting for the house to sell before we parted ways for good. The property market was hot, so I was hoping to get it sold within a month or so. During that time, my ex couldn't care less. I changed the locks on my door and the security camera system to keep her away from my stuff. Can you believe she even invited him over to my house while I was out? She knew he was using her, and yet she still dodged him, even in my own home while I was at work. If only my security camera had Wi-Fi to alert me, I would have caught them red-handed. Even though my ex is now my housemate, and we're no longer in a relationship, if I'd caught that guy in the act, I'd make sure he didn't leave alive. But I'm not a murderer, so I'm good. 12 years ago, we purchased the house and owed around $160,000 on it. Recently, we listed it for $240,000, and just 3 weeks later, we sold it for $265,000. After paying the necessary fees and taxes, we split the leftover cash. I probably should have just let it go, but I made a promise to myself that I would expose her scumbag lover. The level of disrespect they showed me is just unacceptable. She even made me take pictures of her to send to him. When I confronted her about their affair, she lied and denied it, and then to add insult to injury, she brought him into our home, knowing full well what could happen if I caught them in the act. Lucky for them, I have evidence of everything, including footage of him sneaking into my ex-girlfriend's bedroom. It's not pretty, but I'll be damned if I let them get away with it. It wasn't easy to find who his wife was and where the affair partner lives with his family. As I approached his wife, I found her to be a confident and sociable person with whom it was easy to converse. However, when I revealed to her that her husband was having an affair with my ex-girlfriend, she became very anxious and demanded that I provide her with all the details right away. I explained to her that I didn't have all the evidence at that moment and that I intended to show her some text messages and video footage. Later that evening, we met at a restaurant where she confessed that she had already suspected her husband of having an affair, but she couldn't prove it due to his deceptive behavior. After some discussion, she agreed to meet me for lunch after work, and when she arrived, things were a bit tense between us. But being the jester that I am, I decided to lighten the mood and crack a joke about us having a little closeness session, and you know what? She actually chuckled. Maybe she was into it, or maybe she was just being sarcastic, who knows. After that, we swapped some hilarious stories about how gross our respective partners were. It was a bonding experience, really. And before we said goodbye, we exchanged digits. Now, I didn't end up calling her for a one-night stand, but I did get a call from my wife's affair partner. I'm guessing he got my number from my ex-girlfriend. So, I got a call from this dude who sounded like he was auditioning for a role in a gangster movie. Apparently, he was mad that I talked to his wife about their little affair, and he was threatening to end my life for it. Good times, huh? Anyway, turns out his wife left him, and now they're battling in family court. I bet he's regretting getting involved with my ex-girlfriend in the first place. Speaking of which, she texted me a few times saying sorry for bringing her scumbag man to my place when she knew I had security cameras. But you know what? I think she was just trying to hurt me because I ended things between us. She can't seem to see that she's the one who messed up. Instead, she's hoping I'll just take it up while she fools around behind my back. Yeah, that's not happening.